Hi there, welcome to Life from Above. My name is David Kenney. Glad you could be with us on the program. Very excited to have a special guest with us, Brent Gallagher. Brent Gallagher is a preacher for the Church of Christ in Fairmont, West Virginia. He's been there for about 25 years. He's also preached at Pine Grove, West Virginia, and he started at New Matamoras in Ohio, and very familiar with this part of the country we're talking about. So Brent, welcome to the program. Glad you could be with us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Now Brent he's doing a series of gospel meetings at the Wadsworth Church of Christ on Westgood Avenue. The theme is Jesus, the Son of God, and we have the meeting times there and the schedule, all that, and the address. Obviously, by the time this airs, the meeting will be over. But we really appreciate you coming in and recording these lessons for people on WCTV and GBN to be able to see and enjoy from, because Jesus, he's really the centerpiece of the world. And why did you choose that theme when you were doing it?
I guess a couple of different reasons. Obviously, I need to know more about Jesus. I mean, the Bible emphasizes Jesus. He's the center of Scripture. From beginning of Genesis to the end of Revelation, it focuses on Jesus. And number two, he's not only the Son of God, but I mean, he really is just the hope of the world. I mean, he's what we need. He's what it's all about. And we've been trying to focus on different aspects of his life and really who he was, who he is, and what he really requires from us.
Well, great. Now a little bit more about Brent. Brent's parents, William and Betty Gallagher, they're both deceased. He has two siblings, Bill and Becky. He's married to Janie Higginbotham Gallagher. We'll talk a little bit about her in a minute. Matter of fact, we have a picture of your wedding that I stole from the internet. So, but how long have you all been married?
35 years.
Okay, so 1979.
36 years. Hope she doesn't watch this.
Oh, trust me. This will be the only time you see this footage. Brent was born in Dover, Ohio. He went to Dover High School. He went to Freed-Hardeman College when E. Claude Gardner was the president, and then he went on to Harding Graduate School of Religion and studied there. He has his master's degree as well. He has three children, Ryan, Amy, and Jason. And he has four grandchildren. We've got a great picture of you and Janie with the grandkids here. I think that's all of them.
Yeah, that's all of them.
That's it. So a wonderful family. Really enjoy spending time with them. We've been friends for a long time. We'll show a picture of Frank and Rose, Janie's parents, and that's Janie there behind Rose, and then that's your brother-in-law Steve. Why don't you tell them a little bit about some of these characters?
Well, actually, that picture was taken in July of 2013. It was taken in Gatlinburg. We had a big family get-together. It was very nice. Steve and his family, and Janie and my family, and Frank and Rose, all were able to get together. And Frank ended up passing away just about 3 months after that. But we had a good week together. They're a good family, good Christian family. I met Janie at Freed-Hardeman in 1979. Of course, her dad had preached for years in the Ohio Valley and the Ohio, West Virginia area. And I remember when I first had met her, she said, "You probably heard of my dad, Frank Higginbotham." I said, "No, I haven't." So that's not the way to start out a relationship. But anyway, after that, I did get to meet them. They were super, just good people. Frank, as I say, he was preached for years. Rose also, good wife, a good preacher's wife, and they raised two good kids. I'm very fortunate to marry Janie. Her brother Steve's a few years younger than her, and he preaches in Knoxville, Tennessee, and he writes quite a bit and travels quite a bit in his preaching. But yeah, they're a good Christian family, and actually Rose now lives with us, and she actually has been an asset to our family.
Well, we, one of the things, if you get to know Brent and Steve and humor is definitely a part of the family. I mean, if you come across them, it doesn't take very long to figure that out. And Frank, some people might think, well, this guy doesn't have a sense of humor, but they all do. I mean, every one of you. And I always like the story about Frank going, you guys take him to the baseball games.
Oh yeah.
And refusing,
Yeah, I'll tell you, Frank actually, he took us. He got free tickets to Pirate games, so nothing better than a free ticket to a game. But over the years, Frank had a radio program, daily program for, I think it ran 40-some years on a radio station in East Liverpool, Ohio. And anyway, he'd get free tickets, and we go to, I don't know, I've probably gone to dozens, maybe more than that, 50 to 100 baseball games, free over the years with him. But we'd go up there and we'd take, the kids and grandkids and so forth. We're not actually the grandkids, I mean, their grandkids, Frank and Rose's being our kids, but Frank was always, he's a very, very convicted person. I mean, he felt very strongly about the Bible, about, things are important. He also felt pretty strongly about things that weren't that important, what kind of car you drive and things of that nature, but always very strongly convicted. And he would hate, he just hated alcohol, and he saw the effects of alcohol, which I do too, but he would not pass beer at a ball game. So you'd see somebody on his left or right wanting beer, and of course we were all sitting down next to him, so the beer would be coming down the road. We'd all be passing it, and then you'd start to hand it to Frank, and Frank would stare straight ahead with his hands on his legs and say, "I'm not passing that beer, I'm not a bartender." And so then we'd have to slosh it around him, and of course what does that say about us? We've already been passing the beer. So anyway, but we got a lot of memories about that, funny memories. And the other thing, which I guess was ironic, that even though that's the way Frank felt, we almost always got stuck next to the worst drunk in the stadium, always, and it was always right next to Frank. So anyway, that's just the way it works,
Yeah, we got a great picture of Frank and his birthday cake here, and Rose, and this is I believe is it his 80th birthday? I'm not sure which one that is.
Yeah, that was his 80th birthday, so that would have been, I think that's the last birthday he celebrated. Yeah,
I believe so. And Frank, of course, been a staple of Ohio Valley for a long time. Regular preacher, and matter of fact, Frank his father-in-law is so well known. When they had his funeral, we actually had a group of preachers pose for a picture. You take a look here, and some of these faces, members of the church will recognize, some of you may not, but I can't remember, there's 30 plus preachers of the Ohio Valley and surrounding areas that came to Frank's funeral and dearly loved him. And matter of fact, my dad's back up there in the top right, and matter of fact, back in the doorway, if I remember right, it's my mother. She happens to be in the picture, and then I'm on the far left there if I even show up in there. But Frank was very well respected, and still is, and Steve continues his work, and you do too, and so it's we could do a whole program on Frank, and Rose, and just a great family. You're also involved in teaching. You do the West Virginia School of Preaching. You told me you taught since you've been teaching since 1999. Yeah, teaching Greek, Hebrew, and you're not
Hebrew.
No, Greek, Hebrew history.
Yeah.
And then also now you're doing the Godhead.
Godhead, yes.
So you've been doing some teaching since 1999. Continue to do that. Matter of fact, and just in case you think you can go disguised, I grabbed this picture of you for the West Virginia School of Preaching for people, so they can, just in case you can think you can go incognito somewhere. I
really appreciate you putting that on there, David.
So. But Brent's been a major friend of my father's for many years, and to our family and all that. And I wanted to sort of ask you, obviously some of these things are sort of emotional to us, because they're so close to us. But what are some of the preachers? Who are some of the preachers that and influences that brought you to preaching? Because your family background isn't all that much in the church, if I recall correctly. I mean, it is, but not in preaching so much.
No, not preaching.
And so maybe give them some idea, because I think it's important. If we're going to have preachers in future generations, how do we get them? How do we get men to say, "I want to preach the gospel"?
In my own personal experience, we had, of course, your dad preached, and I'll talk about that in a second. But we had a few preachers before him, and they both started, I guess, they call Timothy classes or training classes. They would, after the boys were baptized, I remember on a Friday night we'd meet for an hour, and we'd practice reading scripture publicly, doing things and giving small talks. And so really from the time I was probably 11 or 12, I did those things, gave small talks, and then and I always had somewhat of an interest in preaching, but we were trained to do certain things. And then of course your dad moved to New Philadelphia. I'm guessing I would have been maybe 14 or 15, somewhere in that neighborhood. And he also encouraged me to preach. But I think those classes are very important. As a matter of fact, where we are in Oakwood Road, we have a large amount of families, young kids. In fact, we just had 3 boys baptized within the last few months, and we've started doing this again, having training classes for them. They're relatively young, by 9, 11, and maybe 13 or 14. And matter of fact, this next Sunday, they're going to conduct the services Sunday evening. So I think that's very important. And preachers had a big influence on me, the various preachers, and obviously that has an effect. When your dad moved to New Philly, he always encouraged me to preach. I'll tell the joke, the story. Yeah, David's dad, he had a tremendous sense of humor, and you never could know if he was joking or not. That was a problem I always had with your dad. Like you, I usually could tell if you're joking or not. With your dad, I never knew. But I'd gone away to Freed-Hardeman College. I'd always preached some, spoken some. I had interest in church, but I wasn't sure I wanted to be a full-time preacher. So I thought maybe I'll be a math teacher. So I went down to Freed-Hardeman, and there was another student with me who was a preacher student. We came back first break, and Warren announced to the congregation that the two preacher boys are home from Freed-Hardeman. I went out afterwards and told your dad, I'm not studying to be a preacher. And he just sort of grinned at me. Next time I was home, same thing. The two preacher boys are home, and I always tell the story. Just Warren wasn't too bright, but I know it wasn't that. Warren just was encouraging me to preach, and probably your dad is the main reason I'm preaching today. So, and I jokingly say, if you don't like my preaching, you could blame Warren Kenney. He's the one that pushed me into the ministry. So it's Warren's fault. Yeah.
Yeah. They and he told me. I mean, you wouldn't tell him this, but I'll tell him. He told me, or I've heard him say on multiple occasions, that you're the only person he's ever had in a teenage class where the teenager do more than the teacher. Yeah. And he had a great respect for you, and I know that. I mean, we could go a whole show. Well, we probably couldn't, but talking about some of the funny things that have happened over the years in preaching, and who were when you went to Freed-Hardeman, who were some of the professors that stood? I mean, you're going to Freed-Hardeman,
Mm-hmm.
I think you told me you were thinking about math, and then all of a sudden, you had to have more influences too at Freed-Hardeman to drag you, I guess.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed the environment there, and actually, I mean, Freed-Hardeman was a great, and still is a great place. Had a very positive influence on me. Different preachers, actually. Rubel Shelley, even though he sort of doctrinally has gone a different direction, he encouraged me to preach because I was talking to him about some issues, and at the time I wasn't considering preaching, and he wanted me to. And anyway, I guess he's next to your dad as far as encouraging me, but I had some good teachers. Dow Flatt was just an excellent man. To this day, I can remember things he taught me in class. I mean, about life. And I think that's the thing about preaching people don't always understand. They look at preachers as sort of stoic people who study the Bible, no sense of humor, and don't understand life. But these are really good people that really give you a lot of input into life and different angles of life, and they're human beings. Preachers have faults, preachers laugh, preachers cry, and I saw that in these men. Dow Flatt was a tremendous example. Hard teacher, but very disciplined, and he taught me discipline. I mean, he had to memorize a lot of things in his classes. William Woodson was an influence in a different way. They both were great teachers, different types of teachers, but Brother Woodson also. And probably those three, Brother Shelley, of course, and then Dow Flatt and William Woodson. It was interesting, when I left Freed-Hardeman, I went on to Harding Graduate School, and I sort of felt intimidated, thinking, well, we're not really, we're sort of a small backwoods, college in West Tennessee. But in all honesty, the students that I went to Harding Graduate School with from Freed-Hardeman were the best prepared and best trained for graduate school. And I was really sort of shocked and impressed that how good a training I had. But again, the training isn't just in the Bible, it's in life. You learn a lot of important lessons about life and character from these men and from Freed-Hardeman.
Then you go to Harding Graduate School Religion, and you were there when Thomas B. Warren was there, and some other. What were some of the other professors, or what was it like to be at the school at that time, just to give people sort of a historical flavor?
I don't remember as much about that. Well, the first semester I was there, I wasn't married, and I had, of course, Brother Warren, and even Brother Warren was gone a lot that semester. He was helping Brother Garland Elkins in a debate he was having, actually in West Virginia. Learned a lot from Brother Warren. Graduate school was different. I mean, you only met maybe 3 hours a week, and it was all independent studies. So really, I didn't have a whole lot of friendships there. I didn't know as many of the students. It's not like a regular college. And of course, most of the students probably were married, and many of them lived off campus. So it's different from that standpoint. But I had Brother Warren, and I had some Brother Lynn of Church Growth, very practical. There was a teacher named Joel Johnson, taught counseling classes, learned a lot from him. Bill Flatt, Dow's brother, taught there, a very good teacher. So had good teachers, learned, and surprisingly, I was talking with David the other day about my graduate experience, but I found more practical experience about ministry in graduate school than I did in undergraduate, which sort of surprised me. You always think of graduate school as more, theory and things of that nature, but it wasn't the case. It was very, very practical, and I appreciated the training I received. Yeah.
Now, how much has this training and everything helped you to be able to be an effective teacher at West Virginia School of Preaching?
It's helped some. I mean, there's no question. Of course, they called me, Emmanuel Doherty called me, wanted me to, I guess the Greek teacher had resigned. He called me in '99, and I thought it was like a prank phone call. He says, "You want to teach Greek?" I said, "Yeah, that's what everybody wants to do, teach Greek." But it helped me mainly because I'd had 2 years of Greek at actually Freed-Hardeman under Dow Flatt, and I still can remember his voice, his lessons, what he said. But Greek's like a lot of things. You lose and forget so much of it. And in graduate school, I had Brother Jack Lewis. I forgot he taught, a very demanding teacher, very. But he everything he does is excellent. He expects that out of his students. But when I went back into it took a lot of work. I spent a few months in the summer. As far as teaching Greek, it's one thing to know Greek a little bit, and of course the old joke, I know a little Greek. He runs a restaurant down at the corner, but. Most preachers know a little bit of Greek and you forget it. But when you start teaching others, that's a whole other issue. So that summer, I'd wake up usually about 4:30 in the morning, and I had an old VCR and a VHS cassette tape of Brother Roy Deaver teaching how to teach Greek, and I'd watch that every morning. And it took a lot of coffee to go through that. But just through effort, a lot of stuff came back, and actually I enjoyed, once I relearned Greek and learned how to teach it, I really, really enjoyed it. And, I think that's true about anything you teach. Whenever you teach, you're going to learn more than the students, that, because you prepare. And, but yeah, the training definitely helped me. I mean, I can't complain. I received a very good education at both Freed-Hardeman and Harding, and I think it's definitely helped me in my ministry. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that, we've been we've been doing a lot of stuff the last few days, but one of the things that we've been doing is just talking restoration history, and you have a great interest in all kinds of restoration history. But what areas of restoration history are you focused on?
I'm right now focused more. Of course, we talk restoration, trying to go back to the Bible. I'm focused on where I'm living right now. A lot of it in Fairmont and West Virginia. There's so many unnamed people who were preachers in the really mid to late 1800s, early 1900s that have sort of fallen by the wayside. Church histories have been lost, and a lot of information out there. And as a matter of fact, the town I'm living in, Fairmont, I was reading through an old Christian leader periodical and found out the church was started there in 1853. No one in the area had any clue about it, but I was reading a reference to a man said he knew 3 women who had started the church there, and he was writing an article about that. And that just intrigues me. Anything historical intrigues me, so I wanted to know who were these women, or how, what's the background, and I'll probably never know. I've tried to, I've researched as much as I can, but things like that just, pique my interest. And I guess I've always been that way about anything historical. Whenever I see something old, or I want to ask a question, how'd that happen, or why'd that happen, and I've just sort of the way I'm wired, I guess.
Yeah, it's a really important subject. Well, one of the things, about preaching, I mean, you have obviously a bachelor's degree, and you have a master's degree, you're teaching at the school, but from my observation, a large part of your work for the largest part of your life has been pulpit ministry and all that. What is different, maybe for someone that's teaching at a school versus someone that, I mean, you're right there on the front line of it.
Yeah.
What was you see? You're sort of getting a flavor of both of them.
Well, I mean, preaching's about people, and in all honesty, I mean, most of it, really it's just dealing with people. I mean, the pulpit part of it's important, but really you're dealing with people on a daily basis. And the old saying, people don't know how much you know until they know how much you care. And I really think the most important thing for not the most important, obviously, a preacher needs to teach the truth, but you need to care about people, care about all people, and that goes a long way. And I enjoy being with people, and I enjoy working with them. So that's a big part of it. Preachers are different. I enjoy studying, but I also I enjoy just chewing the fat with members of the congregation. Now, some preachers aren't that way, but I do enjoy that aspect of it. So.
Now, here in town, I was talking to Brent about this earlier, in Wadsworth and other communities. I mean, Bedford, different ones. I mean, Wadsworth, I'm sure they don't think they're unique in this problem, but it's getting to be more widespread. But they're combating a heroin epidemic in town, and they're trying to get their arms around what to do. They're trying to help these people. They, obviously, you want to try to keep them away from it, but also to try to help people that have been ensnared by it and everything like that. And you were talking, you did some missionary work in Ukraine, and you were telling me, you know, what it's like to be in a society where they have pushed God out and Jesus out, and you can see it. You told me you saw it really well in the Ukraine. Why don't you tell them a little bit about that, so they can sort of see? I mean, we're having major problems.
Yeah, I was only there for 3 weeks, right in the very middle of Ukraine in summer 2006, and it's very depressing. I mean, the country, communism basically removed religion from the country, and there's so much corruption. Of course, after communism fell, basically sinful people moved in, and now you have so much corruption, and their standard of living now is worse than it was under communism, because of the way these corrupt people run the country. But tremendous drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and as I was telling you, the political leaders want God in Ukraine. We send Bibles to Ukraine frequently. We taught the Bible in a public school when we were there, and they know that when the Bible's taught, when people follow Jesus, homes are better, the society is better, you're going to have a better world. And I think it's interesting, you know, as the United States, we seem to be fighting over whether you can even mention God's name at certain public events, excuse me, where a country like Ukraine and Russia, they're begging for Bibles. They're saying, we want, you know, a standard, we want morality in our lives, and it's sad. And really, of course, broken lives are sad always, but you know, it's just sad when people have no hope, or think they have no hope.
Yeah. Well, I think it's always, you know, when I was in college, they talked about how they're having the discussion about expanding sex education in public school. And one of the arguments that they made was, we have to do this because they're not learning these things at home.
Yeah.
But yet that's on one hand, but on the other hand, they say, oh, we got to get rid of God, we got to get rid of the Bible, we can't have this kind of morality here, so we're going to push that out. That they need to learn that stuff at home. And I'm like, well, wait a minute now, which one do you want to do? So obviously our values as a nation has been shaken, and people have lost, not everybody, but you know, there's we've lost our moral compass. The Founding Fathers were very clear about, I wonder if people don't think about the fact that, you know, people say, well, there's no mention, of course, it's not exactly true, but there's no mention of God in the founding documents and things like that. And there's no standards of morality in there or anything like that. And the reason is because they believed in the Bible.
It was a given. Yeah, it was understood.
Yeah, and it was assumed. And I think now we have people today, they assume that doesn't matter.
Yeah, and that's that. And I understand the relationship between, you know, how much can be taught. It's a complex relationship. I understand that as far as, you know, teaching of religion, but the reality is, you know, I think we just need basic values taught. You know, I mean, right and wrong, honesty. I mean, how you know, the golden rule. You think about that. If we taught the golden rule in our schools, it'd be a whole lot different world. But somehow, whenever you start talking about any form of morality, quote, you've brought in a religion, and we got to shut you down. And the effects are sad. Again, getting back to Ukraine, here's a formerly communist country that's facing horrible moral problems within, and they know the Bible's the answer. They know it. Even from a practical standpoint, they know the Bible will make better citizens, better homes, and make it a better country. And it's a shame more people in our country need to know that. Yeah.
It's going to be a lesson that I'm afraid that we're going to have to relearn. And you know, we can learn from history, or we can relearn it again. And often, you know, people think history class is tough. Relearning the lessons can be really difficult, really painful.
That's
so, you know, your lessons going on, you talk about Jesus, Son of God, talking about Jesus, you know, he's unique. He had respect for the Bible. He loved sinners, was interested in their care. He fought the traditions, the religious traditions that people were binding upon people. Wednesday night's lesson about, or Tuesday night's lesson about Jesus is the way, highly unpopular today, but so important. And Jesus is the solution, to the home, and then Jesus is coming back. So thank you for coming in our program. Glad to have you with us. Hope people will stay tuned in the lessons. This is the information. If you're in Oakwood at the church there, stop in and see Brent and visit their services and worship with them. And again, Brent, it's great having you, and thanks for being a part of the program.
Enjoyed being here. Thanks a lot, David. Okay.
Before we close our program today, we'd like to take a moment and review this roadmap to heaven with you, since the matter is so serious. There are many incorrect set of directions out there, and sadly, so many people are following them. For example, some people have been given wrong turns. They believe things such as faith only, works only, or grace only. Or some attempt to change the order of the turns, being baptized before they even believe. Some people fail to realize what point they are on the map. Don't even open their Bibles yet, and they think they're saved already. As a person travels in a car or takes a hike, it has to follow the proper directions, so we must follow the proper directions to heaven. Let's take a look at the directions on our roadmap to heaven here. You have to look at these passages in your Bible for yourself. We'll just list the steps, the turns on the way. First is to believe or to have faith. And then number 2, to repent, to turn away from sin. Number 3 is to confess that Jesus is the Son of God. Number 4 is immersion, or to be baptized, which is a burial in water to have your sins washed away. And then you're added to the church by the Lord, not by a group of people, or not by giving some kind of testimonial experience or things like that. And then once you're added, you need to serve and worship the Lord faithfully all the days of your life. And the key word's faithfully. You don't waver. And that's very important. We need to keep in mind, too, that in Noah's day there was a big flood, and only people in the ark were saved from the flood. The same is true today. There is no salvation outside the Lord's church. Where are you on the roadmap to heaven? Thanks for watching our program. Please let us know if we can assist you with further information for your journey.